as a guest for Madagascar, and we already consider you as a team because you must be part of a team to receive this call from Najima. So I'm very happy to have you on board. First of all, I'd like to speak a little bit about the agricultural program. Our main focus is food security. We are in a very food insecure country. Generally speaking, Madagascar is food insecure, but there are some areas where a little bit well off, but most of the sites are in malnutrition with some food insecurity problem. And the main role of the volunteer is to improve food security through basically increasing agricultural production and supporting farmers on improving their business development. So we have basically two goals in that sense to improve food security. Our goal number one is increase food production through improved agriculture technique. Our main focus for that is promoting gardening, homestead garden especially. So we place volunteers with farmers associations, farmers co-op, some non-profit organizations to support them improve their gardening techniques and working with local farmers. And another part of goal number one in improved food production is rice farming. Madagascar, surprise, it's rice 3 times a day, but yet our production is very low and cannot meet the needs of the population. So we promote SRI technique, which is an improved rice farming technique. And we also promote small animal husbandry under that goal. And that's for goal number one. For goal number two, as I said, it's business development. We are not a business program, but yet when farmers have their surplus, we need to support them to access to market. So to access to market, they need very basic business skills and very basic household financial management skills. So we provide them those basic techniques on financial management and entrepreneurship. So that's our program in a nutshell. In terms of placement, volunteers will be placed in rural areas in Madagascar. So electricity is not available in most cases, but those are rural areas, very, very beautiful rural areas. As you know, it's Madagascar. I'm not going to tell you more so that you will see more on the ground very soon. So that's basically about the food security in Madagascar program, food security program in Madagascar. And as brief as it is, the more question you have, the more I can tell you more about this program. So, open for questions.
Hi, I'm Rosalie. I have a question about the project itself. So, is there also, I think I remember from the description of the program that it's also related to natural resource management and environmentally friendly technique. Is this the case?
Yes, that's correct. As you know, food security cannot go away from environment. So for placements, we place volunteers near protected areas in some cases, because we still work with our former environment partners. So volunteers will be placed with NGOs doing natural resource management. So there's always the environment part of the program. And we also promote a lot of agroforestry.
Oh, that's
program.
perfect.
So
Okay.
there is a room for natural resource management and also for agroforestry. And you know, as as long as volunteers work under our priorities, which is food security, there is always room for secondary projects, which could be environmental education, natural resource management, and such. And it depends on the needs of each site. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Perfect.
Thank you very much, Rosalie.
Well, if no one else is asked his question, then I also would like to know a little bit more about the placement, because I've personally never lived in a rural area. I always lived in the capital, even if it was in developing countries. So, okay, so there might not be electricity, I guess also not running water.
Correct. I will respond to Rosalie's question, and then I will respond to the questions in the chat box here. So yes, you're right, Rosalie. There is no running water. It's rural areas, and that's, I would say, 95% of the sites. There might be some minor changes, but it should not be taken as a norm. So volunteers will live in small villages, um, and in villages where it's a rural villages in Madagascar. No running water, as you said, no electricity. But market is within 2 to half a day distance max. 2 hours to half a day distance max. Marketplaces. And banking town is similar to that distance. Yeah.
Okay.
So when you get to your banking town, you have access to running water if you stay in a hotel, electricity, internet, and such. But we place volunteers in areas where there is coverage at least 15 minutes, 5 minutes up to 15 minutes walk from house. So coverage is available within the village, but maybe not within the house. So those are the basic criteria of our sites. And of course, they are all safe sites, accessible by Peace Corps vehicle all year round. Those are our sites.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So let me respond to the question in the chat box here. How different will be farming in Madagascar compared to typical farming sites in the States? Well, really different. Really different. So I guess I am not fully familiar with farming system in the States, but I will try to respond to that question. Oftentimes, correct me if I'm wrong, as I am Malagasy, I don't have much experience in the US. Farming in the States is more industrialized, big farms with machines oftentimes, and for the most part having good access to water supplies through canals and dams and such. In Madagascar, it's different. Our farming system is mostly family exploitation. It's a family owned, oftentimes very small scale, and in the most case it is for own consumption, and part of it is for income, but it is basically for self-consumption. And the techniques is oftentimes not very advanced, therefore the need for agriculture volunteers, because they use traditional techniques for the most part. If we take, for example, the case of rice farming, we are a big rice eater as a country, but the rice farming techniques that the majority of farmers do is not advanced enough to increase production. Therefore, we promote SRI technique, system of rice intensification, which ironically is rice farming technique discovered in Madagascar, but the adoption rate is below 2%. I hope that responded to that question. And the question number 2 is, can you describe one or a couple of the more successful secondary projects that have been implemented? Okay. I would say anything related to youth project is always very successful in Madagascar. Anything secondary project related to youth development. We can take, for example, it might sound like part of the program, but it's not fully part of the program yet. School Garden, for example, is a very successful secondary project that volunteers do. They work with primary school students and promote School Garden project. Those are one of the very successful ones. And anything related to youth development, really, like promoting leadership camps, for example, leadership groups, by having a youth group going into what we call GLOW camp, Girls Leading Our World camp. Those are very successful projects, which is also part of our Let Girls Learn initiative. Madagascar is a Let Girls Learn post. So those are also one of those very successful projects in Madagascar. And I hope it responded to that second question. If not, we can still discuss about it. Another question, a third question. I have a former student who is now head of 1 Acre Fund in Rwanda. Is it possible to link up with him for funding through service? 1 Acre Fund. So maybe my response to that is, if 1 Acre Fund can, because Peace Corps volunteers cannot receive funding directly. All fund must go through what we call Peace Corps Partnership Program, which is, the acronym is PCPP, Peace Corps Partnership Program. All fund must funnel to that, and by law it's only the country director that can receive funding. But we have a specific portal in which volunteers can apply for grants, and they can nominate who is going to fund their program. Thank you, Najma. So if 1 Acre Fund is willing to fund any of your project throughout service, you can apply your grant through Peace Corps Partnership Program, the PCPP, and 1 Acre Fund will send their funding to the PCPP portal. And you will be given much information about how the grant process works throughout your service, if not during your pre-service training. In terms of tool availability and access to water for irrigation. Tools availability, if we speak of basic tools such as spade, machete, it's pretty much available within your bank in town. But in terms of machines, for example, those are not accessible. But for basic gardening tools, those are easily available. And for irrigation system, it really depends on sites. It really depends on sites. Let's say some sites have a more advanced irrigation system, but advanced in that term means they just have dam and canal. But most sites may rely on using a water can and bringing water from nearby wells and canals. So that would be the norm. A perfect irrigation system is really not present in Madagascar, and I'd like to take this occasion to talk about effect of climate change in Madagascar. We are really going through big drought right now in Madagascar. January is supposed to be a rainy season, and it's supposed to be raining right now. All rice fields should be flooded, but very unfortunate. Rice fields are still full of cracking soil, and it's really dry, and so water is really a big problem. And part of your job will be really promoting climate smart agriculture, which we will have time to discuss and go through all the trainings on climate smart agriculture. Part of it will be initiated during our pre-service training, and some of it will be addressed after 3 months at your permanent site. You return back, and we will have a refreshing training in which we can still talk about climate smart agriculture and such. After 3 months of service, you return back to our training center. So water is a big problem in Madagascar, and I foresee it will become a problem that volunteers will take role on mitigation of the effect of drought in Madagascar. Another following up question. Also, during my recent work on my master, I researched ongoing reforestation project with lemurs and other frugivores. Is there opportunity to work with ecologists and residents on this and soil amendments? Yes, definitely. As I mentioned, some of you, not all of you, will be placed around protected areas. Some of you will work with NGOs dealing with reforestation, dealing with natural resource management, conservation. So there is a room for that. For soil amendment, that is really part of our program, and we will start that right away during our pre-service training. Reforestation, we will deal with that during your in-service training, which is 3 months after your swearing in. Does Madagascar suffer from slash and burn ag practices like many tropical areas? Does Peace Corps make a concerted effort to promote alternative? Soil conservation would be an example. Yes, Madagascar really suffers from this slash and burn technique, and it keeps going, and it has been around for, decades, if not even century. We are losing our topsoil, we are losing our forest every year. If you can look at statistics, it's really scary, especially when we go through political unrest. More and more of those you will see. And also burning the hills. Farmers generally think, which sometimes it's true, if you burn the mountain, as they think, more greener grass will pop up. So it's a very bad technique from their side, but that happens a lot. So to mitigate those, we promote what we call slope salt, which is slope agriculture technology. This is what we promote. It is part of your technical training that we will briefly talk about during your pre-service training, but we will focus more on that during your in-service training. So we definitely promote techniques to mitigate those and to address slash and burn techniques. Okay. How many of us will be going to sites with ongoing projects, and how many will be going to new sites where we may be forming new connections? And okay, so for replacement sites, let me pull out my, I don't have the number on top of my head right now, but there will be about 26 or 25 of you coming to Madagascar, and I foresee in my last counting, unless there is change at the last moment, about 10 of you will replace new sites. Will replace former current sites in which current volunteers are still working. So there will be some ongoing projects there, but you will have plenty of room to start your own as well. But definitely some of you will carry on some projects as well. And continue composting project, definitely. Composting project, anything related to soil amendment is really needed, because We have very poor soil in Madagascar, with the exception of very few regions, but the norm is that we have very poor soil in Madagascar. So composting, cover crops, promoting nitrogen fixing plants in order to improve soil, anything for soil amendment, soil improvement will be carried over, and all of you will be involved on that. Just for preview, gardening is what we call a must-do activity for all volunteers. So all of you will be doing gardening. So for you to do gardening, obviously you need to amend the soil, so composting definitely will be part of it. I will be linked with 3 schools in the States for very different purposes: cultural, geography, international and community development, food scarcity and sustainable farming, biological diversity, loss, pressures. Is the most effective way to do this through my blog, or does Peace Corps use other links? I have already gotten approval from worldwide schools. You can always do your own blog to connect with friends and family and other interests. And, you know, we also have our own post Facebook page. So, and we have volunteer managing that, a volunteer whom we call, it's a third-year volunteer, extending third-year volunteer, a PCV volunteer leader for communication is the one managing our Facebook page. If you can have access to it anytime, you can check it, but there is a room for connecting with them through your own blog. And also, sometime, if that's part of the agenda of the volunteer in charge of communication, why not? Yeah. After the training, once we are working on the project, we'll be, after training, once we are working on the project, we'll be receive any kind of supervision or advice for improvement. Yes, after the training, we will send you to your site. Staff member will help facilitate your integration to site through what we call installation. You will be installed by Peace Corps staff. And then we will introduce you to your local co-workers and supervisor. And oftentimes the local supervisor is the one who requested the volunteer. Maybe head of organization, head of local co-ops or associations. So those will be your local supervisor. And from the Peace Corps side, we visit volunteers throughout their service. At the very least, you will receive 2 official visits from programmers, which is myself and the program and training assistant. And you will receive visits maybe from the medical officer, from the safety security officer, and maybe you can expect visits from the country director or from other senior staff. But at the very least, you can expect 2 visits from the programming team, myself and the program assistant. So those will be part of the advice and for improvement. And of course, we will conduct phone calls sometimes, periodical phone calls, by the way, with volunteers, and communication through emails and such. In addition to Amy's above question, will all volunteers be working alongside NGOs, farmers, co-op, other partners? Will some volunteers be working autonomously, more independently? So, regardless of hosting organizations, the ag volunteers work is more independent compared to other sectors. It's due to the nature of your work. But yet, there is always a supervision from a local supervisor, be it the mayor or the vice mayor or the head of the village or head of cooperatives. You are independent in a sense of sometimes timing, but in terms of designing a project, you always work with your community, with your local counterpart, local supervisors, so that you do not work completely independent and that you design your own agenda for development of the community. So the question is real, so the response is really you are independent, but not fully independent. I don't know if it makes sense for you, but it's not a job where your local supervisor will speak to you every week or every 3 days in terms of what have you done today? Can you report to me about this particular number? It's not really a job where a boss is there to tell you what to do every day. I mean, the local supervisor is not there for that every day. They will provide you a general guidance on what's going to be your job, and you will work with your local counterpart, and oftentimes of your own choice, because it's not always available someone who is working for the organization who is available 24/7 to work with a volunteer. So therefore the volunteer has the independence, if we can use that, to choose their own counterpart, but not their own supervisor. The response is a bit ambiguous, I can understand, but the job itself could be of that nature, a little bit ambiguous at the first time. Yeah, but I hope it responded to your question, Andrew.
Hobby, can you add, because when we were talking a while back about the project and what it takes to be a successful volunteer, you had mentioned that there's a lot of room for creativity, and that's the beauty of being an agricultural volunteer. Can you tell them about the Jesus story really quickly? The volunteer.
Oh,
I think that would be really
Jesus.
good to share. Yeah.
Thank you very much for reminding me about that, Najima. The Jesus story. I'm not talking about one of the candidates whose name is Quasi Jesus here, for clarification's sake. There is a volunteer in Madagascar who went to a completely new village for Peace Corps, a completely new site. So when he first arrived, there is no garden. Almost no one is doing farming because it's a fishing village. So they heavily depend on fishing. But when fishing is not possible due to weather or other conditions that prevent them from fishing, they have to rely on other alternative, and that is agriculture. So the volunteer arrived there. No one knows gardening. No one knows basic farming techniques. Therefore, no one requested for him to do anything. So he was a bit discouraged at first. So because he's supposed to do agriculture, but no one is interested in agriculture because they are all fishermen in a fishing village. So what he did was, because he worked with a local organization, he started first his own garden. That was what he did during his first month at site. He started his garden right a week after he was in the village. So after 1 month and a half, he planted some fast-growing vegetables. He started to harvest some of his vegetables. So that attracted curiosity from people because it's a very sandy soil where the traditional belief is that you cannot grow anything on a very sandy soil near the beach. So he organized a big town hall meeting in which he displayed his harvested vegetables in front of his yard and asked people, working with his counterpart, of course, spreading the word, because the volunteer has very long hair, so people call him Jesus, because if you have long hair in Madagascar, white guy, automatically everyone will call you Jesus. So he calls himself Jesus too because of that. So he displayed his garden produce in front of his yard and put a very big poster outside and saying, "Come to join me for gardening feast or something like that. And of course, you are not going to pay anything, because it's not like going to church paying something for Jesus. It's calling to the, how do you call the money you pay for Catholic Church when you go
Tides.
to church?
For
Tithes.
tides.
Yeah, you don't need to pay tithes despite I'm Jesus, some jokes like that. It is in order to get people's attention. Sometimes you have to, be creative and oftentimes make a fool of yourself a little bit so that you can get people's attention. So it was very effective. First arrival at site, no one is doing garden, maybe 1 or 2 max. But 3 months at his village, I think he counted around 16 new gardens. And in one of those new gardens, one particular family managed to sell their garden produce within just 3 months of his site. 60. Okay. Yeah, you remember the words.
I do.
The number, Najma.
I
Yeah.
do.
So
Yeah, I do.
yeah, it's a very poignant story. So you really have to be creative in this job. That was not part of the deal to display a poster and calling yourself Jesus, but that was from himself. But the deal is that you promote yourself and you promote Peace Corps and you promote what we do as an ag volunteer, and depending on how you do it, people will respond accordingly. But he got very positive responses from the community. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, hubby.
Yeah, thank you very much, Najma. You will hear more of that during training, because Jesus himself will be one of your trainer.
That's exciting.
Or, yeah, it is. It is. He will tell you more about that. Is it safe to bring laptops and cameras? So general guidance, it is safe to bring your laptops and cameras as long as you are careful not displaying them there where you should not. We will give you more details about safety measures once you arrive in country, but many volunteers bring their laptops, many volunteers bring their cameras, but it's like any country, some insecurity may arise, and that's theft or any robbery that could occur to volunteers, but generally speaking, it's safe to bring those. And for those who are not planning to bring laptops, I'd like to tell you, and I'm sure Najima have told you about that, volunteers need to submit report to us every 3 to 4 months, and that report require access to computer, and it is really, really helpful for you if you bring your own laptop, because this report requires access to laptop. So I highly recommend volunteers to bring laptop. Camera is your own call, but laptop, I highly recommend you to bring one with either Microsoft or what is the other one? Mac computer.
Yeah, Mac.
Yeah. Yeah, either Mac or Microsoft. Either one will be very helpful for you. So I highly recommend you to bring one. Yeah.
Agreed.
Thank you for the clarification. You're welcome. In terms of drought and climate-smart ag strategies, has there been any communication about simple aquaponic approaches? It can save about 90% of water use since it... thank you very much, Kylie Jensen. We have not talked about aquaponics yet, and maybe something you can promote if it's something feasible at your future village. And I highly recommend you to do that, because yeah, that would be very helpful. And just for your information, we will go through project review somewhere in May of this year, so it will be a very good time to discuss about anything that we could do as well. And in any Peace Corps project or activities, we always talk about the Venn diagram in which we address the needs of the community, but a good Peace Corps program is a program that has this sweet spot of a Venn diagram in which the Peace Corps skills is on the table, the community needs is on the table, and the country strategy or the country needs is on the table. So if aquaponics meets that criteria, why not? But as again, we will talk about the project review in May of this year, so I will look forward to talk about that, Kylie. So please remind me about that once you are here. Nancy, I have made a concerted effort starting to learn the language. Good job. The Peace Corps recordings are tough to hear clearly, and since no one here understands Malagasy, what kind of understanding do we need to get started? That is good that you've started, Nancy, and anyone can start if they want to, but really speaking, excuse me, really speaking, with or without pre-learning, we will start from zero level once you arrive in country. So with or without pre-departure language training, everyone will start from the same level. So don't worry too much about understanding or level of understanding before coming to country, because it's not required. But if you've started, that's perfect. And I will address that recording problem with our training team so that they will look forward to maybe improve that later on. Could there be project involving animal husbandry such as beekeeping or keeping chickens? Yes. Response is yes. Yeah. And we are going to talk about that not during your pre-service training, but probably during your in-service training, which is 3 months after swearing in. What are your recommendations for bringing phones? Are volunteers required to bring them? You are not required to bring phone, but if you have unlocked phone, it's okay to bring them. But just forewarn you that sometimes volunteers complain about their phone not working properly once in Madagascar, maybe because of bandwidth or something like that. Sometimes volunteers' smartphones do not work properly, but it's helpful to have them. Yeah, it's helpful to have them if they are unlocked.
Yeah.
But upon arrival at Peace Corps Training Center, we will provide you phone, very basic phone in which you can make a call and send text, and that's it, as basic as that. And we will help you purchase them. Peace Corps will pay for it first, and you will reimburse to Peace Corps once you receive your settling in allowance. But Peace Corps will help you get a new phone, and that is optional. And will help you get your SIM card, and again, that also is optional. But it's up to you. Don't worry about phone, you will get one. What are recommendations? Where in the country are most AG volunteers placed? Mainly in the north? Not mainly in the north. It's mainly towards the center, the east coast, and southeast. Those are the most number of AG volunteers, because those are the place where they really need food security improvement. Yeah. During the first 3 months of training, we'll be staying in a city. I'm asking to know if it will be possible to buy there some items such as clothes, or we should bring everything with us. During the first 3 months, you will be placed in a rural village. Very rural village, to be honest. So in terms of buying clothes, depending on type of clothes, I would suggest you to bring some with you. And I think, I'm not sure if Najima has a list of recommended items to bring, but you definitely need to bring clothes with you. I mean, in a
Yeah.
like
It
prepared for a 3 months vacation, something.
Yeah, I want to add that definitely you want to bring enough clothes for 3 months because during the first 3 months, obviously you're going to be in pre-service training and you're going to be in a rural village, and so you won't be able to actually go buy items. But do not pack for 2 years. You obviously can buy clothes while you're there and shoes. But I would like to note, like if you're taller like me and or a tall woman or a tall man, it may be difficult for you to find maybe a long pants or a long skirts, so you may want to pack a few extra if you're like out of the average height, or so. But I definitely want to just suggest that just bring clothes and that will last for at least 3 months.
Yeah, and particularly in terms of clothing, we will be placed in a very rural village, which is a very rainy area. So bring appropriate clothes for raining areas. Yeah, such as mud shoes. Sometimes you will walk through very muddy roads, raincoats and such. Yeah,
Yeah,
that would be very, very helpful.
and a thick jacket because it does get cold, doesn't it, hobby at the training center?
It does get cold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I would suggest bringing a bigger coat.
Yeah, it is a tropical island, but the place where you're going to have training for the first 3 months, it can get really cold.
Yeah,
I mean, no joke,
yeah.
really cold.
Like,
So, yeah, be prepared for that. It's not cold as snowing, but it can get really, really cold. All right. What would you consider most important to bring with us? There is much discussion about tech, and I'd rather not waste space weight on. Okay. So if you speak of clothes, I would suggest that you pack for at least. Um, I'm not speaking of numbers here. It's really up to you of how many, but clothes for working on the field, on the rice field, for example. You will need short when you go to the rice field. You will need some clothes that can afford getting muddy when you go to the rice field. And you need to bring, I would suggest, 4 pairs of jeans and some clothes for business casual. At least 2 choices of clothes for business casual or 3 choices for business casual. But because when we do your swearing in ceremony, you will be in front of journalists, in front of ministers, in front of officials. So it's very nice to pack some of your nice clothes for such ceremony. Yeah, business casuals is definitely needed. Yeah. But I will look for a list of what volunteers suggested in terms of clothing, and I will send that to Najima.
Yeah, I think it should also be already posted in one of the Facebook
Okay,
site,
good.
and I know there's volunteers that are also part of that group that have been giving some suggestions as to what they should bring. But
Great,
Nancy,
great, great.
I mean, you don't have to you don't have to bring a laptop. But in regards to the reports that you do have to do quarterly, I have found that volunteers are happier and life is a little bit easier if they do have the laptop. Your banking town may be 30 minutes away, it might be closer, but I think kind of in terms of what is expected from you in terms of turning in these reports, it's easier to have a laptop at hand.
Yeah. Would you consider most important? Okay, that's responding. Will I be only PC volunteer in my community? I really don't understand the question, but I will try to respond to it. Volunteers are volunteer throughout the 2 years of service. So, and you are volunteers 24/7 by definition. So, wherever you go, for us, you are Peace Corps volunteers, and whatever attached to that title will apply to you throughout your 2 years of service. So whether in community or not, you are a Peace Corps volunteer. But maybe you mean by that is, can I do some sort of work with within community outside of your community? Yes, volunteers can always work in a closer community, but yet your duty station is your community. So supporting a nearby village, which might be part or not part of your community, is totally appropriate, if that's the meaning of your question. What's well is...
Oh, rain boots.
Rain boots, yeah, you will need that. You will need that.
Okay.
Yeah, you will need that. Paint and draw, so okay. Oh, if we will be the only PC volunteer in our village. For the most case, yes. In a very rare occasion, some volunteers will have another volunteer in the same village. But that's very rare occasion. In that case, it might be a health volunteer or an education volunteer, but that's a very rare case. Maybe we have 3 to 5 examples of that currently, but not more. So there might be a possibility. But the volunteer living nearby, which means 30 minutes nearby, 1 hour nearby, is very common. It's not in the same village, but it's in a nearby village. 1 hour bike, 30 minutes bike, 2 hours bike ride from the next volunteer. That's widely available. Yeah, you're welcome.
Hubby, can you take maybe a couple minutes just to walk them through what PST will look like, pre-service training? Yeah.
All right. So you arrive in Madagascar on February 8th in the middle of the afternoon, and you will go straight to our Peace Corps Training Center. It's a very nice training center. I think Najima saw it. It's a very nice.
It's the best Peace Corps worldwide. It is absolutely gorgeous, you guys. Just have to say that.
It's really true, and it's really true. It's really the best training center you can imagine in Madagascar. It has everything you might need. Not really everything, but it's very nice and comfy. And you will spend 3 nights at the training center to get basic language training, basic safety information, basic medical information, all introductory sessions. And then you will be sent to your local host family, Malagasy host family. So you will stay with them for 4 weeks. You will stay with them for 4 weeks, but every day you will attend either of the following: language class, a group language class composed of 3, 5, 7 max trainees per group, language class. And you will also attend big group, like one group of agriculture, big group of technical trainings. We will have some indoor technical trainings and outside practices in which we will practice directly play with mud to do gardening or rice field. And you will attend medical sessions, how to stay healthy in Madagascar, safety security sessions, how to stay safe, and administrative sessions. That's for 4 weeks. On the week 5 of your pre-service training, you will, you will visit your permanent site for 2 weeks, and that starting end of week 5 of your service. Someone from your community will come to the training center and will travel back with you to your permanent site. So don't worry about being lost and not seeing where the village is. Someone from your community will come here and will go to your village. And you will spend about 2 weeks at your permanent site, and then you will return back on your own following the same track, how to get to your site, and how to make back to the training center. So 2 weeks will be spent at your permanent site, your village basically, during which you will learn about integration, get to know the community, get the feel of how is it living in a village, in a rural area of Madagascar, how is going to be my life for the next 2 years. Is this a good fit for me? It's really staying in this village, respond to this question, is this the right fit for myself? This is exactly what you're going to do for 2 weeks at your permanent village. And then after the 2 weeks, you return back on your own to the training center, and we will finalize training by doing more intensive technical trainings, because the first 4 weeks, 5 weeks will be focused on language learning, integration, cross-cultural sessions. That will be the main focus of the first 5 weeks. We will do some technicals, but not many. But the remainder of your pre-service training after you do your site visit will be highly focused on technical sessions. There will be language, of course, continuously, but there will be more technical than other things. So there will be more hands-on activities. There will be more outdoor activities for AG volunteers. And that will be about 4 weeks after you arrive in country, after you're done with your site visits. Yeah, that's going to be the big picture of pre-service trainings. Yeah. Maybe the question, where are you going to stay during the 2 weeks site visit? You will be staying with a local host family, the one that will come pick you up at the training center. Yeah. Oh, I just asked my colleagues and said that iPads are not compatible with program you have to use to do reporting. Yes, iPad is not compatible yet. It's not yet. It's not compatible with our program for reporting yet. I don't know when are we going to be able to use a mobile device, but for now it's not feasible yet. What challenges might some of us as a minority in the States face in Madagascar? Okay. Challenges. Maybe you'll refer to volunteers of color, or volunteers with different faith, beliefs, different sexual orientation. In Madagascar, volunteers of color do not have particular problems, but sometimes that may arise is that volunteers may not think, Malagasy people may not think that you are American. You will constantly receive that questioning, like, are you American? I don't think you are American if you are of different color in Madagascar. So that will constantly occur. Volunteers of color might be said that maybe they think you are African, maybe they will think you are Asian, or maybe they will think you are Malagasy if you look more, if you have more Indonesian feature or Filipino feature. Those will be the issues for minorities, if I can call that an issue. But in a rare situation, people might question that as a little bit harsh, with especially for African Americans. Sometimes people will see that as sometimes problematic for some people, because in areas where, I'm very sorry for that wordings, where touristy areas, where sometimes Malagasy people will look like African Americans, and maybe they're illegal or something of activity. Maybe people will associate volunteers with that if they are of African American features or other minority. Like recently, for example, as an example, Uh, illegal mining is happening in some part of the country, and illegal mining is done by Chinese companies, and there has been protest against that. So sometimes volunteers with Asian feature may get questioned by people about that, but wherever volunteers go, we will always introduce volunteers to a wide range of community, to community leaders, to big community meetings, that this is an American volunteer and this is their job here, and we introduce you to big community meetings, to government officials in your regions. So don't worry too much about being singled out, but yet it happens, but not impact on your security. But sometimes harassment might happen related to those.
I'd like
I
to
have
add.
friend.
Oh, go ahead.
Go
Okay.
ahead. Go ahead, Nacho.
Oh, I was just going to add that I know that in country there are different support groups that you can join that also will create a sense of community if you're going through any kind of the challenges that may you may come across as being part of a minority group. I found that personally very inclusion and support group exactly. I found that very helpful during my service and when I served in Kenya, and Madagascar has very strong groups that offer great support, and even people on the Madagascar staffing team that you can go to and just talk through whatever challenges you may be facing in regards to that.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Najima. And we will bring the inclusion and support group to pre-service training, and they will have a session with your group and sharing their strategy, their experience with you, how to deal with potential issues related to minority that might happen in the States. Yeah. Question from Nancy. I have a friend who is in Burkina Faso. She started as health agent and ended up working in education. We don't have that particular problem in Madagascar. Like I am not quite sure of the situation. Are you saying that they were invited as health agent, but once they arrive in country, they ended up teaching? If that's the case, we don't have that case in Madagascar. If you are invited as an agriculture volunteer, you will be here as an agriculture volunteer conducting food security project. But it's totally your choice to include education as part of your secondary project. But education, I mean, here is not teaching English formally in a school setting, in a classroom setting, but maybe as a secondary project conducting a conversation club in English, or any support to local students you would like to have, but in a very informal setting. Yeah, but the switch of a sector is not possible in Madagascar. But, however, if they started as an agricultural volunteer, for example, and you completed your 2 years of service and you want to extend in a different sector, which is not agriculture, that is possible, and that is your own call, not a Peace Corps asking you to. So after completion of 2 years of service, you can always apply for a different position, and that could be a different sector. Maybe that's the case of your friend in Burkina Faso. Right, a local teacher died during her time, stepped in to help. So she stepped in, so maybe I call that as her own choice. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Great. Well, we're about we've been on for about an hour now, and I just want to say thank you so much for the great questions. I really appreciate that you all came prepared for this conference call. Habeen, is there anything you may want to add as they prepare for? They have like a couple more weeks left before staging.
Oftentimes, when a good advice,
Get some good advice. Yes.
enjoy the 2 weeks back home, because you'll be here for
Before
some
you know
time,
it.
and
Hmm.
yeah, and I would say Madagascar is a great country, and we are very happy to have you here in Madagascar, and really looking forward to have you during this PST. This is an experience that you will really, really enjoy, hopefully, but a very learning moment for you all because it's a different setting. Yeah.
Definitely.
So come with open-mindedness, with preparedness, because PSD requires that. But it's a different experience that I'm sure you will enjoy. Yeah, yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, Hobie, and for everything and really walking us through the agricultural project. And I want to thank you all again for joining the call. I know it's rather early for you all, but it has been recorded, and so I will send it out to you the next couple of days. But thank you, and if you have any questions, please feel free to email me at Madagascar at peacecorps.gov, and then I'll respond. And I will see you in February 4th for staging in Philadelphia.
Thank you very much,
All
everyone, and
right.
thank you, Najima.
Thank
Looking
you.
forward to see you on February 8th, everyone.
Yep. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Take care, you too. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.